Commander Lisa Grant stood at the observation deck of the USS Vigilant, staring at the seemingly peaceful planet Nexus 7 below. The blue-green world rotated slowly, clouds swirling across its surface like brushstrokes on canvas. Everything appeared normal according to their instruments, yet Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Still brooding, Commander?" Lieutenant Kevin Shaw approached carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. "Something feels off about this place," Lisa said, accepting the cup. "I can't explain it, but my gut's screaming at me." Kevin smiled. The infamous human intuition. The Galactic Council still can't understand how we make those leaps without data. Lisa's attention remained fixed on the planet. "I want to delay the diplomatic envoy by 24 hours. I want more scans." Admiral Carter won't like it. "The Nexians have been waiting 6 months for this meeting." "I don't care." "Something's wrong down there." Kevin sighed and sipped his coffee. After 5 years serving under Commander Grant, he knew better than to argue when she got that look in her eyes. "I'll inform the bridge. What exactly should we be looking for?" Lisa frowned. "That's the problem, I don't know." 20 minutes later, Lisa stood on the bridge, watching as her crew conducted deeper scans of the planet below. The Vigilant was a mid-sized exploration vessel with a crew of 83 humans and 12 aliens from various council races. They had been assigned to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Nexians, a newly discovered intelligent species that had just achieved spaceflight. "All atmospheric readings are normal, Commander," reported Science Officer Megan Lewis. "Oxygen levels consistent with previous readings. No unexpected radiation or chemical anomalies." "Surface structures?" Lisa asked. "Consistent with our previous scans. Their cities are intact, power signatures normal." Lisa drummed her fingers on the command chair. "What about life signs?" "Approximately 4.2 billion, as expected," Megan replied. "Distribution patterns match our previous observations." "Commander," Communications Officer Ben Fletcher interrupted. "I'm receiving a message from the Nexian High Council. They're asking why our landing party hasn't departed yet." Lisa walked to the large view screen showing the planet below. "Tell them we're conducting additional safety protocols and will be slightly delayed." "They won't be happy," Ben warned. "Better unhappy than—" Lisa stopped herself. Then what? She couldn't explain her unease even to herself. "Run biometric scans on the Nexians in the capital city," she ordered suddenly. "Compare them to our first contact records." The bridge crew exchanged glances, but no one questioned the order. Lisa had earned their trust over many missions. If she sensed something was wrong, they took it seriously. Hours passed as the scans continued. Admiral Carter had sent 3 increasingly urgent messages from Starfleet Command, demanding to know why the diplomatic mission was being delayed. Lisa stalled, claiming minor technical issues with their shuttlecraft. "Commander," Megan called out finally, her voice tight with tension. "I found something. It's subtle." Lisa moved quickly to the science station. "Show me." I compared the biometric readings of the Nexian officials from our first contact 3 months ago with current scans, Megan explained, pointing to her display. "There's a slight difference in their cellular structure. Nothing obvious, but there's a 0.03% variation in their DNA equivalent." "Could it be natural?" Lisa asked. "Possibly, but it's consistent across all individuals we've scanned. That's statistically improbable." Lisa straightened up. "Full quarantine protocols. No one goes down, no one comes up. Alert Starfleet Command." "Based on a 0.03% genetic variation?" Kevin questioned softly. "Based on that and the fact that something feels wrong," Lisa replied firmly. "And in my experience, when humans say something feels off, a planet usually vanishes." 2 days later, a specialized containment team arrived from Earth. Their advanced scanning technology revealed what the Vigilance equipment couldn't detect. The entire Nexian population had been infected by microscopic silicon-based parasites that gradually rewrote their host's DNA. The parasites were intelligent and had been planning to infect the human delegation, using them as a vector to reach Earth and other populated worlds. Admiral Carter himself came to the Vigilant to deliver his apology. If you hadn't trusted your intuition, Commander Grant, we would be facing a galaxy-wide pandemic right now, he said, standing in Lisa's office. The parasite appears engineered specifically to target spacefaring species. It would have spread rapidly through the Council worlds. How are the Nexians? Lisa asked. Gone, Carter said grimly. The parasites completely replaced their consciousness weeks ago. What we were talking to were essentially puppets. The real Nexians died in the first wave of infection. Lisa felt a chill. And we almost sent a diplomatic team right into their hands. The Council representatives are quite interested in how you knew, Carter continued. The Voloth delegate specifically asked what detection technology we were hiding from them. What did you tell them? The truth. That you just felt something was wrong. Carter smiled faintly. They didn't like that answer. They never do, Lisa said, looking out her window at the quarantined planet. Already, ships from various Council races were arriving, preparing to sterilize the entire world to prevent the parasite from spreading. Later that evening, Kevin found Lisa back at the observation deck, watching as specialized vessels began the process of burning away Nexus 7's atmosphere. How do we do it? He asked quietly, standing beside her. How do humans just know when something's not right? Lisa shook her head slowly. I wish I could explain it. It's not telepathy or any special power. It's just, we notice patterns without realizing we notice them. Little things that don't add up. The Council races are calling it the human intuition phenomenon. Some of them are frightened by it. Maybe they should be, Lisa said softly as the planet below began to glow with controlled fire. Because we were right again. And next time, we might be looking at their worlds and saying those same words. Something feels off, Kevin whispered. Together they watched as Nexus 7 burned, another planet that vanished because a human had a feeling that saved billions of lives. Across the galaxy, Admiral Paul Carter sat behind his desk at Starfleet headquarters, reviewing the holographic display of incident reports. His assistant, Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, organized the data in chronological order. That's the 6th time this year, sir, she said, all following the same pattern. Human reports something feels off. Investigation reveals catastrophic threat. Planet gets quarantined or, in 2 cases, completely destroyed. The Admiral rubbed his temples. The Galactic Council is starting to talk. They've noticed the pattern too. They're calling it the human intuition phenomenon. The Arcturian delegate suggested all human officers undergo psionic testing. Paul laughed dryly. As if we haven't tried that already. No evidence of telepathy or precognition, just hunches that turn out right. The latest report is from Captain Greg Daniels on Epsilon 9. He diverted his entire fleet based on a feeling that the planet's moon was wrong somehow. They found a doomsday device hidden inside, powerful enough to trigger the star into supernova, and, let me guess, no logical reason he suspected anything. None whatsoever, sir, he said, and I quote, It just didn't sit right with me. Paul stood up and walked to the window. Earth looked peaceful from orbit, blue and serene. How many delegates are attending the emergency session tomorrow? All 43 Council races will be represented, Olivia replied. The Voloth are sending their High Commander. They're afraid of us, Paul said softly. Not because we're violent or aggressive, but because we see things they can't. Is that such a bad thing? Commander Grant's intuition saved billions of lives in the Nexus 7 incident. Paul turned back to face her. People fear what they don't understand, Lieutenant, and they really don't understand this. The next day, Paul stood before the assembled Galactic Council in their orbital chamber. Representatives from 43 different species sat in tiered seats, their translators humming softly. The Voloth High Commander, a tall insectoid being named Zextral, spoke first. Admiral Carter, the Council has called this session to discuss the growing concern over what some call the human intuition phenomenon. 6 major incidents this year alone were averted, because human officers reported feelings or hunches that proved accurate. That's correct, Paul confirmed, and in each case those hunches saved countless lives. No one questions the results. the Arcturian delegate interjected. His blue skin shimmered under the chamber lights. What concerns us is the mechanism. How can your species detect threats that our most advanced technology cannot? Paul spread his hands. We don't know. We've conducted extensive testing. No telepathic abilities, no special powers. Just intuition. Impossible, hissed the Draconid representative. No evolved species can consistently predict danger without sensory input. We don't predict danger, Paul corrected. We notice patterns, sometimes below our conscious awareness. Things that just feel wrong. The council chamber filled with murmurs, as the delegates discussed among themselves. The Trilaxian ambassador, a being composed of crystalline structures, leaned forward. Admiral, 2 weeks ago, a human mining supervisor on Trilaxian Colony 5 evacuated an entire facility because she felt uneasy about the rock formations. 3 hours later, the entire mine collapsed due to previously undetectable quantum instabilities. Thousands of my people would have died. How did she know? I can't explain how she knew, Paul admitted. But I'm glad she did. The Council is proposing mandatory psionic monitoring for all human officers serving on alien worlds, Zexitral announced. For safety purposes. Paul frowned. With all due respect, High Commander, that sounds more like surveillance than safety. Can you blame us? The Draconid representative asked. Your people possess an ability none of us understand. Some among our ranks believe humans might be evolving into something else. The room fell silent. Paul looked from one alien face to another, seeing the same emotions in their vastly different features: worry, suspicion, fear. We're not evolving into gods, Paul said firmly. We're just humans who sometimes get feelings about things, and so far those feelings have saved millions of your people. Before anyone could respond, Paul's communication device chimed urgently. He glanced down at it, then paled. Excuse me, council members. I'm receiving an emergency alert from the USS Horizon. The Horizon was stationed at the edge of council space, monitoring a stellar nursery. Its captain, Laura Bell, was one of Starfleet's most experienced officers. Paul activated the communication link, and Captain Bell's face appeared on the chamber's main screen. She looked tense. Admiral, requesting permission to evacuate the Keldon. To colony immediately. On what grounds, Captain? Paul asked, aware that every council delegate was listening. Sir, we've been observing the local star for 3 days. All readings are normal, but something feels off about its stability. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Paul could feel the delegate's eyes on him. All readings are normal? He confirmed. Yes, sir. Our science officer can't find anything wrong. But 5 different human crew members have independently reported the same feeling. Something's wrong with that star. Paul looked at the council members, then back at the screen. How many people on Keldon 2? About 30,000, sir. Mostly Draconid colonists. The Draconid representative stood up. This is absurd. We have monitored that star for decades. It is perfectly stable. Paul turned to him. Would you bet 30,000 lives on that? The Draconid's scaled face showed conflict. Finally, he said, Our people will resist evacuation without evidence. Then I'll provide some, Paul decided. Captain Bell, divert 2 science vessels to conduct intensive scans of the star. Begin preparing evacuation protocols. Yes, sir, Bell responded, and the communication ended. Paul faced the council. Members of the council, I propose we recess this meeting pending the results from Keldon 2. If nothing is found, we can discuss psionic monitoring. But if something is found, Zexitral continued, we will need to reconsider our understanding of human abilities. 3 days later, the council reconvened. The Draconid representative spoke first. The Keldon colony has been successfully evacuated, he announced, his voice subdued. Our science vessels detected quantum fluctuations in the star's core 18 hours after evacuation began. The star went nova this morning. The chamber was silent as images of the explosion filled the main screen. The Keldon colony world was gone, vaporized in the stellar blast. Had we delayed evacuation, all 30,000 colonists would have died, the Draconid admitted. I withdraw my objection to human intuition. Paul looked around the chamber. Members of the council, we don't understand this ability any better than you do, but perhaps instead of fearing it, we could all learn to trust it. Zexatral stood. The proposal for psionic monitoring is withdrawn. Instead, I propose a new joint research initiative to study this phenomenon, with full human cooperation. Agreed, Paul said, because when humans say something feels off, a planet usually vanishes. It would be good to know why. Dr. Natalie Patel adjusted her neuroscanner, focusing it on Sergeant Frank Miller's brain. The laboratory on Earth's orbital research station was filled with blinking equipment and monitoring devices. Try to describe what you felt when you identified the cloaked warship, she said. Frank shrugged. It wasn't anything specific. The star field looked normal, but something about it just seemed wrong. Like when you walk into your home and can tell someone's been there, even though nothing's visibly different. Across the lab, Dr. Alan Cooper documented the session. That's consistent with what the other subjects reported. No concrete data points, just pattern recognition happening below conscious awareness. The research facility had been established specifically to study the human intuition phenomenon. Alien scientists from 12 different species worked alongside humans to understand this inexplicable talent. The Voloth representative has a theory, Alan said. They believe humans evolved in an unusually dangerous environment with predators that could perfectly camouflage themselves. Those who survived developed heightened senses for detecting subtle inconsistencies. Maybe, Natalie replied. But that doesn't explain how Sergeant Miller detected a cloaking technology that's supposed to be imperceptible to all known sensors. Whatever it is, Frank interjected, it's saving lives. Last month, Corporal Diaz felt something wasn't right about the Proxima Centauri outpost. They evacuated just before the whole thing collapsed, due to quantum instability no one had detected. Natalie removed the scanner from Frank's head and studied the readings. Your brain shows increased activity in the right anterior insular cortex when you recall the moment you sensed the cloaked ship. That region is associated with intuitive decision-making. So I have a special brain? Frank asked with a half-smile. Actually, no, Natalie said. Your brain is structurally identical to most humans. The difference is in how it processes information. The lab door slid open, and a tall blue-skinned Arcturian entered. Dr. Jean was the lead alien researcher on the project. Dr. Patel, we have new data from the Epsilon incident, Jean said, his translator converting his whistling speech to English. The human pilot who sensed the spatial anomaly was exposed to exactly the same sensor data as her Trilaxian co-pilot. Yet only the human detected anything wrong. Did you run the differential perception test? Natalie asked. Yes. When shown the same visual data, 17 out of 20 humans reported something feels wrong, while 0 out of 20 non-humans detected anything unusual. Alan walked over to join them. That eliminates the enhanced sensory input theory. Humans aren't seeing or hearing something others can't detect. They're processing the same information differently. But how? Frank asked. And why only humans? Natalie turned to a large display showing brain scan comparisons. We think it has to do with how human brains handle pattern recognition. Humans are constantly receiving and processing millions of data points from our environment. Most of this happens unconsciously. All species do this, Jean pointed out. Yes, but humans have a unique neural pathway that connects our pattern recognition centers directly to our emotional responses, Natalie explained. When we detect a pattern violation, something that doesn't fit, we feel it before we consciously understand it. That's why it comes as a feeling rather than a thought, Alan added. Your brain is essentially saying, danger, before it can tell you why. Frank nodded slowly. That makes sense. When I spotted that cloaked ship, I felt anxious first. The logical reasons came later. John's large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of excitement in Arcturians. This could explain why the human ability cannot be replicated by technology. Your machines analyze data sequentially and logically, Human brains process information in parallel, with an emotional component technology cannot duplicate. Is that why other species don't have this ability? Frank asked. Possibly, Natalie said. Most council races evolved with more specialized brain structures, more efficient in many ways but less intuitive. Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent message on the main screen. Admiral Carter's face appeared. Dr. Patel, we have a situation. The colony ship Homestead is requesting an emergency inspection. Their human navigator reports something feels wrong with their warp drive, despite all diagnostics showing normal function. Where are they? Natalie asked. Approaching the Cygnus gateway. If there's a drive malfunction there. He didn't need to finish. The Cygnus gateway was a busy transit hub. A warp core breach there could affect dozens of ships. I'm sending you the sensor data now, Carter continued. See if your team can identify what the navigator might be sensing. The screen filled with technical readouts from the Homestead's warp drive. Natalie and her team studied them carefully. Everything looks normal, Alan said after several minutes. Containment field is stable. Matter-antimatter reaction is within parameters. John pointed to one section. The field harmonics show a slight fluctuation, but it's well within safety limits. Wait, Frank said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. Look at the pattern of those fluctuations. Natalie zoomed in on the data. What do you see, Sergeant? I'm not an engineer, but those pulses, they're not random. There's a pattern to them, like they're building to something. Alan enhanced the display. He's right, the fluctuations are increasing by exactly 0.03% each cycle. It's so gradual that the diagnostic system doesn't flag it as concerning. But if this continues, the containment field will fail in approximately 6 hours. John finished, his voice whistling with alarm. Admiral, Natalie called out. You need to order immediate warp drive shutdown. Those fluctuations will lead to catastrophic failure. Carter nodded grimly. I'll relay the order. Stand by. While they waited, Natalie turned to Frank. How did you spot that pattern so quickly? Frank looked embarrassed. My daughter plays this rhythm game. The pattern in those fluctuations reminded me of one of the song beats that builds up before a big drop. Natalie and Alan exchanged looks. A video game rhythm compared to warp field harmonics, Alan said. No computer would ever make that connection. But a human brain did, Natalie finished. Minutes later, Admiral Carter returned to the screen. The Homestead has powered down their warp drive. Engineering teams have discovered a microscopic fracture in the dilithium crystal. It was causing the harmonics Sergeant Miller identified. If they'd entered the gateway at warp speed, the crystal would have shattered, causing a breach, Jean said. Exactly. Over 3,000 colonists saved, plus potentially hundreds more, at the gateway station. Carter looked directly at Frank. Good catch, Sergeant. After the Admiral signed off, the lab was quiet for a moment. This is what makes human intuition so valuable, Natalie finally said. It's not magical or mystical, it's just a different way of processing information. One that can make connections no other species or computer can. Jean made a soft whistling sound that his translator didn't catch. Then he said, My people have a saying. Knowledge comes from many sources. Perhaps we have been too focused on technological sensors and logical analysis. Sometimes, Frank said with a smile, you just need a human to tell you when something feels off. That evening, as Natalie updated her research log, she wrote, The human intuition phenomenon continues to save lives across the galaxy. While we're beginning to understand its neurological basis, its practical applications remain our greatest asset. When humans say something feels off, everyone in the galaxy is now learning to listen, because they know what often follows if they don't. Ambassador Diane Richards stood at the large window in her office, watching ships come and go at the Alpha Centauri diplomatic station. In her hand was a datapad containing the latest proposal from the Galactic Council. It was not good news. They're afraid of us, she said to Secretary of Defense Eric Black, who sat across from her desk. This proposal would reduce human presence on exploratory missions by 70%. Eric nodded grimly. They're calling it a safety measure, but we all know what this is. They're unnerved by our abilities. The council chamber on Alpha Centauri had become tense in recent months. Multiple species had begun advocating for restrictions on human involvement in space exploration. The catalyst had been the Proxima incident, where Lieutenant Sandra Lee had insisted an entire mining colony be evacuated, based solely on her feeling that something wasn't right with the planet's core. 3 hours later, unexpected geological activity caused a catastrophic collapse that would have killed thousands. The Hydraxians are our biggest problem, Diane continued. They're claiming our intuition is actually a form of temporal perception, that we're somehow seeing echoes of potential futures. Is there any truth to that? Eric asked. Dr. Patel's research doesn't support it, but she can't disprove it either. What we do know is that in the last 15 years, 37 human hunches have prevented major disasters. 7 planets that would have been destroyed still exist because someone felt uneasy and investigated further. And that terrifies them, Eric concluded. Not because we're dangerous, but because we make them feel vulnerable. If humans can sense threats they can't perceive, exactly, it challenges their perception of themselves as advanced species. The door chimed, and Admiral Carter entered the office. His face was grim. The vote is scheduled for tomorrow, he said without preamble. Current projections show the restriction measure will pass 31-12. That's worse than we expected, Diane said. The Voloth changed their position yesterday, Carter explained. They were supporting us, but now they're leading the restriction effort. What happened? Eric asked. A human security officer on their homeworld reported feeling something was wrong with their planetary defense system. When they investigated, they found it was functioning perfectly. The first false alarm, Diane realized. Exactly. The Voloth are using it as proof that human intuition is unreliable and potentially disruptive. 1 false alarm out of 37 correct warnings, Eric said. Any early warning system would kill for that success rate. Carter sat down heavily. Logic isn't driving this debate. Fear is. Diane returned to her desk and activated a holographic display showing the Galactic Council chamber. We need to change the narrative. Right now they see our intuition as some mysterious, possibly threatening ability. We need to humanize it. How? Eric asked. I want to bring in regular human crew members who've experienced this phenomenon. Let the council see the faces behind the intuition. No admirals, no diplomats, just ordinary people who felt something was wrong and saved lives because of it. Carter nodded slowly. It might work. The Draconids are still grateful for the Keldon evacuation. They might listen. And I want Dr. Patel to present her latest findings, Diane added. Show them that this isn't mystical or magical. It's just how human brains process information. The council session begins in 18 hours, Eric pointed out. Can we get everyone here in time? We have to try, Diane said. If this restriction passes, it won't just affect human exploration. It could set back galactic security. Like it or not, our hunches are saving lives. The next day, the Galactic Council chamber was packed. All 57 member species were represented, an unusually full attendance that highlighted the importance of the vote. Diane stood at the center of the chamber with 5 human crew members beside her. Honored representatives, she began. Before you vote on the proposed restrictions, I ask you to hear from those who have experienced the human intuition phenomenon firsthand. The Voloth delegate rose. Ambassador Richards, we have reviewed countless reports. More testimony is unnecessary. With respect, High Commander Zexatral, you've read reports. You haven't heard from the people themselves. The Tralaxian chair of the council intervened. We will allow brief testimony. Diane nodded to the first crew member, a young woman in a navigator's uniform. My name is Olivia Chen, she said, her voice steady despite the hundreds of alien eyes on her. 3 months ago, I was navigator on the transport ship Horizon. We were on a routine patrol near the Cygnus Gateway when I noticed something felt wrong about the space ahead of us. All sensors showed clear passage, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I asked the captain to alter course by just 2 degrees. She paused, then continued. We later discovered we had narrowly avoided a micro-singularity, a tiny black hole that our sensors hadn't detected. If we'd hit it, Our ship and the 200 passengers aboard would have been torn apart. How did you know it was there? Asked a Hadraxian delegate. I didn't, Olivia admitted. I just knew something felt wrong. After the incident, our science team theorized that I might have subconsciously noticed tiny light distortions from stars behind the singularity. One by one, the other crew members shared similar stories. A security officer who felt uneasy about, a diplomatic guest who later turned out to be an assassin, an engineer who insisted on checking a seemingly perfect reactor core, discovering a microscopic flaw that would have caused a catastrophic explosion. Each time the feeling had come first, the explanation later. The final speaker was Dr. Natalie Patel. Honored Council, she said. I've spent 3 years studying the neurological basis of human intuition. What we've discovered is that human brains process information differently than most species. We make connections between seemingly unrelated data points and sense patterns before we consciously recognize them. She activated a holographic display showing comparative brain scans. This isn't some supernatural ability. It's not precognition or telepathy. It's pattern recognition operating below the level of conscious thought. When something doesn't fit the pattern, even if we can't immediately identify what, we feel it as wrongness or unease. The Arcturian delegate leaned forward. If this is merely pattern recognition, why can't our most advanced AI systems replicate it? Because your AI systems are designed to be logical and efficient, Natalie explained. Human intuition is messy, emotional, and sometimes wrong. But when it comes to detecting subtle threats, that messiness is actually an advantage. We make connections no computer would ever consider. The chamber fell silent as the council members considered her words. Then the Draconid representative stood. My people owe our lives to human intuition, he said. The Keldon colony would have been destroyed if not for Captain Bell's feeling that something was wrong with our star. I move that we reject the proposed restrictions. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Voloth delegate looked displeased. One false alarm on the Voloth homeworld does not invalidate 37 correct warnings, the Draconid continued. If humans sense something is wrong, I believe we should listen. The vote that followed was close, but the restriction measure was defeated 29 to 28. Later, in Diane's office, Admiral Carter raised a glass in toast. To human intuition, he said, still saving the galaxy one hunch at a time. It was close, Diane reminded him. Many species still fear what they don't understand. Then we'll help them understand, Eric said. Dr. Patel's research is just beginning. The more we learn about how our intuition works, the less mysterious it will seem. And in the meantime? Diane asked. Carter smiled. In the meantime, we'll keep listening when humans say something feels off. Because as the galaxy is learning, when we get that feeling, planets tend to vanish. Captain Ryan Butler felt cold sweat on his palms as he addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council. All 57 species were represented, their attention fixed on the human standing before them. You're asking us to evacuate Galactic Central, the home of this council and residence to over 12 billion beings, based on nothing but your feeling that something is wrong. The Zorak counselor's translator couldn't hide the disbelief in his voice. Yes, Ryan said simply. I cannot explain it. There is no data to support my concern, but I know with absolute certainty that this system is in imminent danger. The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos. The High Counselor, a Trilaxian with silvery skin, raised her hands for silence. Captain Butler, you understand what you're asking? The cost, the disruption, the panic it would cause? I do, High Counselor, and I stand by my warning. Ryan had been captain of the patrol vessel USS Sentinel for 6 years. 3 days ago, while passing through the Galactic Central System on a routine mission, he had experienced the strongest feeling of wrongness he had ever known. Something about the system's star didn't feel right. When scans showed nothing unusual, he had contacted Earth Command, who initially dismissed his concerns. But after the events of recent years, human intuition was taken more seriously. His report had made its way up the chain of command until it reached Admiral Carter, who arranged this emergency session. The Voloth representative, still suspicious of human abilities after the false alarm on their homeworld, stood up. This is exactly the type of disruption we feared when we proposed restrictions on human involvement. Captain Butler has no evidence, no data, not even a theory of what might be wrong. With respect, Ryan replied, human intuition has saved billions of lives over the past decade. In 37 out of 38 cases, these feelings have been proven correct. And you expect us to evacuate the political center of the galaxy based on feelings? The Zorak asked. Ambassador Richards stepped forward. We're not demanding evacuation. We're requesting additional deep scan surveys of the star and precautionary evacuation plans be prepared. This compromise seemed reasonable to many delegates. After hours of debate, a solution was reached. Half the council races agreed to begin gradual, voluntary evacuations of their populations, while others stayed but increased monitoring of the star and nearby space. The evacuation itself took 3 days of continuous effort. On the second day, Dr. Natalie Patel arrived on Galactic Central with her research team. Captain Butler, she said, meeting him at the main spaceport where evacuation ships were departing, in a steady stream. I'd like to run some tests while you're experiencing the feeling of wrongness. Ryan agreed, and they set up a mobile lab in his temporary quarters. As Natalie attached neural monitors to his head, Ryan stared out the window, at the system's sun. The feeling is stronger today, he said. It's like standing on train tracks and hearing the distant rumble of an approaching train, but no one else can hear it. Natalie studied the readings. Your brain activity shows the classic pattern we've seen in other intuition cases. Increased activity in the insular cortex and anterior cingulate, but yours is more intense than any we've recorded. What does that mean? I'm not sure, she admitted. But if the intensity of the feeling correlates with the severity of the threat. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. On the third day, the evacuation was in full swing. 6 billion beings had already left the system, with another 3 billion scheduled to depart over the next 24 hours. The remaining 3 billion, mostly from species skeptical of human intuition, had chosen to stay. Ryan was in the council chamber with Admiral Carter when the first instruments detected something unusual. We're picking up quantum fluctuations near the star, reported a Draconid scientist. Very subtle, but increasing in frequency. What could cause that? The High Counselor asked. Unknown. It's as if space itself is becoming unstable in that region. More alarms began to sound as additional sensors detected the anomaly. The star's surface showed no unusual activity, but the space around it was changing in ways the scientists had never seen before. Within hours, the anomaly had grown into a visible distortion in space-time. The remaining skeptical species began emergency evacuations as the anomaly continued to expand. It's a quantum rift, explained the lead scientist, an Arcturian with decades of experience. Space-time is tearing open. The energy release, when it fully forms, will sterilize this entire system. Ryan stood with Natalie, watching the monitors as the evacuation reached its final frantic stage. How did you know? She asked quietly. I didn't, he replied. I just knew something felt wrong about that star, like it wasn't stable somehow. Your brain detected something no instruments could see until it was almost too late, Natalie said. We need to understand how. Later, Ryan said. Right now, we need to get everyone out. The final evacuation ships departed just 4 hours before the quantum rift fully formed. From a safe distance, Ryan and the other refugees watched as the rift engulfed the star, causing it to collapse in on itself. The energy release was blinding even from millions of kilometers away. When it faded, Galactic Central, the planet that had been the seat of the Council for over 1,000 years, was gone. In the aftermath, the remaining skeptics finally acknowledged what many had already accepted. Human intuition was real, powerful, and necessary for galactic survival. A new era of cooperation began, with human intuitives assigned to major population centers across the galaxy. 1 month later, Natalie presented her findings to the reformed Galactic Council, now operating from a temporary headquarters on Arcturus Prime. We still don't fully understand how human intuition works, she admitted to the assembled delegates. But we have confirmed it's not telepathy or precognition. It appears to be an evolved form of pattern recognition, operating below conscious awareness. Humans notice tiny inconsistencies that our conscious minds can't process. Disruptions in light patterns, subtle gravitational variations, minute changes in energy fields. Our brains process these anomalies as a feeling of wrongness. The Voloth representative, once the strongest opponent of human intuition, now spoke in support. Whatever its nature, this ability saved over 9 billion lives in the central system. Disaster. My people will no longer question when a human says something feels off. The High Counselor nodded in agreement. From this day forward, the Galactic Charter will include a new protocol. When a human reports a feeling of wrongness about a location, it will trigger immediate investigation and, if necessary, evacuation procedures. As the meeting concluded, Ryan stood with Admiral Carter and Ambassador Richards, watching the holographic display of ships rebuilding the galactic infrastructure. I never wanted to be right about this, Ryan said softly. None of us ever do, Carter replied. But being right saved billions of lives. What happens now? Ryan asked. Richards smiled. Now we rebuild. And next time a human says something feels off about a planet, nobody will argue when we recommend evacuation. Carter nodded. After all, when humans say something feels off, a planet usually vanishes. The galaxy has finally learned to listen.